Okay, now I have the sound on. I'm kind of having a day here. Um, so sorry I'm a tiny bit late. I see that you all are waiting. Thank you so much for your patience. Um, Even though YouTube will actually add captions after this has been up for like overnight, I think, I'm still going to have just in case someone who is watching needs the captions, I'm still going to have my captions running. So, wow. So I printed out my pattern today and it looks really, really terrible because apparently the printer has had one power surge too many. So today I'm trying something a little bit different, which is actually why I'm kind of at sixes and sevens a little bit. So hopefully this will be better for you. So as we're going along, I'm just going to kind of be checking to see if anybody's asking any questions in the chat. So I have another screen over here, and it kind of looks like I'm looking back and forth. Um, anyway, here we go. So, welcome everybody. I'm Romy, and we are going to be talking today about Rose of the Aegean, and it's the second shawl in the 2022 Lace Lovers Club. And you can see up behind me here that I have it up on a mannequin, but I'm going to kind of give you a little bit more close up of it. So I'm just gonna kind of reach on over here and like drag it down a little bit. I'm watching myself over here in the camera. Okay, so this is the shawl, and it starts right up at the top here. So this is the back neck right up here. And it starts with a kind of modified garter tab. So if you've ever done a garter tab before, you know that you're going to cast on some stitches and then knit a little bit of it and then pick up stitches all the way around. So this is the same. It's just that we're starting out with the patterning because this has an edge patterning here. So we're going to be starting out with that. So this little area up here is the cast on, and then it's going to work down. And as it goes lower, I'm kind of getting this kind of stuck in all my needles here. As it goes lower, there's some tension right about at this point here, and that helps to kind of spread these little leaves out. I'm showing you the medium size, and then so this one has it's a little bit smaller than the tall, and it has fewer beads, but it's still a nice size. So the this medium one is, let's see, 77 inches by 30 inches. So it's still fairly large. And then the tall size is much bigger. That one is 97 inches by 40 inches. So just going to make sure no one says anything. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this over here. So hi, Patty. Um, oh man, I have been fighting brain fog a little bit, and I left some information out of the pattern. I'm really sorry about that. This the beads are 6-0, and those are the beads that you received in your packages. So those of you who didn't get packages, um, yes, it is size 6-0 beads. And I will make sure that that is in my update. I'm about to update the whole thing, and then you can re-download it. And I will also put this information on Ravelry and in the Facebook group so that you can see what I left out and if you want to reprint or just print one page or something like that. So Okay, so let's take a little bit of a look here at the pattern. Um, let's see how this works. Okay, so here we've got the pattern. I have it up on my screen here. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about, when you're looking at the sizes here, there's a medium and then there's the tall. So anything that relates to tall is going to be in those brackets. So you can see down here, there are two different sizes across here. Okay, and as we're going down, you can see that there are different numbers of beads here. So I have 181 beads and they're size 60, and then 271 beads for the tall size. Okay, so instructions in this are given for both sizes, and everything is basically the same until you get up to working chart G here. And we're going to take a look at chart G in just a moment, even though that's kind of farther along, but we'll take a look at chart G later. There's a little tiny difference in chart G, and then after that, it will split off. So this last one, chart H-M, that's for chart H-medium. So this is the bind off chart. So after that medium is done, if you're working the tall size, you're going to go from chart G all the way down here to working the rest of the tall charts. And then finishing is the same. So you can see it's a half circle. Your cast on is going to be at the top. Okay, so let's take a look down here. This is the first chart, chart A, and this is actually, this is going to be done after we do the entire garter tab. So when you're looking at chart A, you can see chart A here. Okay, so if you have done my patterns before, you'll know that I mark off stitches in multiples of 5 from the right to the left, and that is just as a counting aid. So all of these charts are done in what you see is what you knit. So that means that whatever symbol you see, you're going to be working exactly that symbol, regardless of which side you're on. So if you're starting at row 1 over here, you're going to be starting from the right side and working to the left. And then over on row 2 here, you'll be starting on the left and going right. So I've had you put markers between this garter stitch edging and the stockinette stitch body. So each one of the charts at the end, it's going to have 40 stitches between the markers, and that refers to all the stitches in the middle without any of the edging stitches at all added. And then you're going to have 52 stitches total, and that includes all of the stitches that are going to be on your needle. So each one of the charts is shown that way. So the other thing I want to just show you really quick here, on this chart, I have saved space a little bit by using these red stitches. So you can see over here on row 19 and then on row 31, right at the end of the repeat, there's a red stitch. So that means you're going to be working that exact stitch on all the repeats except for the last one. And you'll be able to see that in your chart key. So I have a list here of all the red stitches. These are all of the red stitches that you'll see in this whole pattern. Okay, I'm just kind of keeping an eye over here on to see if there are any questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just ask me in the chat. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the entire thing this time. I am going to show you how to do this garter tab setup. So, because we're going to be using waste yarn and none of this is charted. So this whole thing here, this is not charted. And it can be a little bit tricky just because it's got some patterning in it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about chart A and B. And I want to talk just a little bit here about chart C and this patterning that starts on row 21. So there are sort of twisted stitches in here. So a twist to the left and a twist to the right that goes up here, and that creates leaves. And it creates a really cool texture. So I'll show you that up close. And we're just going to keep going here. So this one, I'm just going to twist that around so you can see it. So you can see the leaves here continue, starting with row 1 up through row 13. And the decreases from row 9, 11, and 13 create a little bit of tension here. I was talking earlier about how it widens out the leaves. So that's where that tension is created. And then we get to charts that look so much easier. They're much smaller. So chart E, that's those petals that you're seeing on the shawl. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the repeat within a repeat. So chart E here, you can see there's a black repeat, and then inside that, there is a red repeat. Okay, so let's go back up here, and I'm just going to talk through this garter tab just a little bit, and then I'm going to show you what that will look like. So I'm going to show you my favorite cast on here. It's a waste yarn cast on, and I'm just going to be casting on 4 stitches using a crochet hook to crochet onto my knitting needle. And then I'm going to switch to my working yarn. So when you're using this type of waste yarn cast on, the waste yarn isn't considered to be a cast on row. The first row is considered to be your cast on row. So this is basically working 2 rows, one of which is the actual working yarn cast on. Then we're just going to we're going to pattern through this whole thing here. And then on row 8, this is where we're going to start picking up stitches around the corner. So that's when it starts looking more like your garter tab. And then row 9, we're just going to do one more row. So this looks like we're ending on, it looks like we're not doing an wrong side row here, but we actually are rows 1 through 9 because there was an extra row up here. So we're just going to work rows 1 through 9. And there are no other rows after that. So just 1 through 9. And once that is done, then we can move on to chart A. So you can see in chart A that I have you place a marker here and here. And that is to separate all this garter stitch edging from the stockinette stitch in the middle. So even if you're not doing your even if you're not following the written instructions and you're doing charts, you can still do those markers. And I think that actually helps. It always helps me just to have a marker there to so I can tell where I am. And I if I lose my concentration, I can still kind of remember where I am, which is always good. Okay, so let's see. Alrighty, so here I am again. So I am going to show my hands. And like I was saying before, I mean, honestly, today is like just one of those days. So bear with me, please. Okay, so here I have my working needles, and I have some waste yarn here. This is just a cotton yarn. It's a little bit heavier than my lace weight, but that's okay. Even if it's a little bit heavier, I am more concerned about it not sticking. So hopefully this won't stick to my yarn and I'll be able to get it out. Okay, so here we go. Alrighty. So I managed to switch over, which today, honestly, total miracle. Okay, so I cannot show you at my nice clean copy of the pattern at the same time. So I have this terrible copy of it here. So we're just going to be doing the garter tab. And first thing I'm going to do is show you my favorite waste yarn cast on. And this is just a crochet onto a knitting needle. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I am going to just make a loop here, and I'm going to stick my crochet hook through. So even if you don't really like crochet hooks, this is a good cast on to learn. You usually don't have to do too many chains, so even for the hookophobic, it's good. Okay, so I'm just going to chain a couple of stitches first. And now I'm going to place my knitting needle side by side here. So I just got a new iPhone, and camera's a little bit different. So I'm still getting used to that a little bit. Okay, so I have these two side by side, and I'm going to bring my yarn over the top here and pull that loop through. Let me see if I can get this better focused. Doesn't want to focus. Okay. Alrighty, now I'm going to just do that 4 times. So the live loop is always going to be on my crochet hook and not on the needle. So even if I pulled this out, I'm just going to show you here. If I pull out my needle, that's not going to go anywhere. So it's not going to unravel. So your live loop is always going to be on your crochet hook. Okay. So I'm just going to go over the top of both and pull that loop through over the top, pull through. I'm going to do 4 stitches. Okay, so after I've done those 4 stitches, I'm just going to do a few more here. Okay, so this is my waste yarn cast on row. And to make sure that this isn't going anywhere, I like to put a pin through this loop so I can remind myself where I stopped. This is where I'm going to unzip from. So I want to know exactly where I've stopped. And I don't want that loop to come out. So just going to kind of pull that tight like that. So here we have a little cast on, just 4 stitches. These are going to come out because it's just a provisional cast on. Okay, so now that I have my 4 stitches here, I have a little ball left of my yarn that I use for the shawl. So I'm going to use that. So when I start out here, I never tie a knot. If you would like to, you certainly can just do a slip knot to the waist yarn or something like that to help you hold your place, but you don't need to. So I'm just going to knit 1 row here. So it does get a little bit loose. You can see that it's pretty loose there. That's okay. Don't worry about that. And now I'm going to do 1 more row. So I just want 2 rows worked into this little, my first waste yarn cast on. So you can see again, super loose. That's not going to matter though. That will be fine. So that's what it looks like so far. Okay, so I'm going to go on to row 1. Try not to knit with your tail like I often do. So we'll get this all organized here. So I'm going to start knitting with my working yarn. And on row 1, I am going to knit 2 stitches through the back loop. So knitting stitches through the back loop makes it nice and tidy. So there's 2 through the back loop. And now a double yarn over, and a double yarn over is just 2 loops of yarn around your knitting needle. I'm going to see if turning this light off will help with the focus here. I'm not sure why I'm not able to get this in focus, and it's kind of annoying me, like no matter what I do. So, well, let's see what we can do about this. Okay. If I have to, I will come back and just re-upload another video where the focus is better. Okay, so let's continue on row 1. Okay, so that's what it looks like after row 1. So you've got this double yarn over. Again, a double yarn over, all it is just 2 loops. You can see up close here, it's just 2 loops of yarn. And it's going to look like a big hole on your knitting. So it won't be 2 actual stitches. It's just going to, when you start working into it, it's just going to look like there's a larger yarn over than a single yarn over. Okay, and then in 2, so when you are working a double yarn over, You cannot knit 2 stitches or purl 2 stitches into this big hole because it will just come apart. So for all of the double yarn overs, we're going to knit one and then purl one. So we have a knit one and then a purl one into the double yarn over. And you can see, like I was saying before, it just looks like a big hole. And so this is after row 2. So you can see there's a little purl bump here, but you won't really notice it when we get going because this edging part is in garter stitch. Okay, and then the whole edging is worked through the back loop, and that's just to make it neater and tidier. If you don't want to do it through the back loop, that is fine. Nothing will happen. It will just, it'll be a little bit of a looser look. So no worries if you don't want to do it. Okay. We're going to repeat row 3 for row 4. I'm just going to kind of whip through this. And this is annoying me so much that I'm going to transition back to my face here and see if I can get a get a better sort of view on my hands that I've had right now. Um, this is just something that just came up, of course, because you know it's that kind of day. So let me see if I can just fix. I just want to fix this and see if I can get a better. Let's see. Let's see here. So because I have because I have a different iPhone now, um, my lens doesn't fit anymore. So technology is fantastic, but you know. Okay, let's see if this helps at all. Just gonna try to put a little bit more light on there. And I think that looks a little bit better. Okay. Alrighty, so we've gone through row 4. Gonna do 5. I'm going to knit 2 through the back loop and then yarn over 2 times. Now I'm going to knit 2 together. And I'm going to raise this up. Maybe that was the solution. Yay! Okay, so here we go. And now so that is when you were looking along the edge and you saw that little kind of sawtooth along there. Um, this is what's going to create that sawtooth. And then let's go back the other way. So as I was saying before, all of the double yarn overs have a knit 1, purl 1 into them. You can also purl 1, knit 1. Either way is fine. No one will ever know. So there's no need to rip anything out. Okay, so that's what it looks like so far. And now we're going to do row 7. It's just going to be 9 stitches. Through the back loop. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know in the chat and I will cover them. Okay, so that was just row 7. I'm going to start on row 8 now. So the first thing to do is the bind off 5. For binding off 5 along the edging, I just use a regular bind off, not the stretchy one. So to bind off 1 stitch, I need to work 2 stitches. So here's my first stitch bound off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stitches bound off. So I have 1 stitch remaining here on my right needle. This edging never goes lower than 4 stitches. There will always be at least 4 stitches in the edging. So now that I have done that, I'm going to knit 3 stitches through the back loop. Okay, so here's where I'm going to start to turn. I haven't turned the work over, so in other words, I'm just at the end of working this first part of row 8. I've done everything up to the point where it says to turn the work 90 degrees. So now I'm going to turn it, goes 90 degrees. And the first thing I want to do is a yarn over. So I'm going to pick up 4 stitches across. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 garter ridges. So it's going to be 1 stitch in each garter ridge. And I'm going to have a yarn over between every stitch that I pick up. So here's my first yarn over and another yarn over. I'm going to find my next garter ridge, which is right here. And I'm just going to kind of help myself along by picking up that loop along the side here. So I can then knit it through the back loop. And that just kind of tidies it up more. And another yarn over. And I'm going to pick up that loop again right along the side here. And knit into the back loop. And then I have 1 more stitch to pick up along the edge. So another yarn over and just kind of grab that little loop along the edge and I'm going to work through the back loop. Okay, so now I am back here. I'm back over here right to my waste yarn cast on. So you can see now I want to put the stitches on my needle. So because I'm going to be unzipping over here where my pin is, I'm going to first slip them onto my right needle and then I'm going to slip them back onto my left needle to work. So I have 1 more yarn over to go here, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to wait until I slip those stitches back. So it doesn't really matter where your tail is. The only thing that matters is getting those loops on there. So here's my first one. I am a little bit paranoid. So as I unzip, I also put these on my needle to make sure that I don't drop anything. So I'm just going one by one. And then we have on the edge, you'll see that there's just kind of a little funky loop there. Now see if you can see that. So there's just a little funky loop there. So I'm going to use that as a stitch as well. And then I can pull the rest of that cast on out. Okay, so now that I have those on my needle, I'm going to take my left needle and just slip them back so I can work them. So there are my 4 stitches. And now I'm going to do my last yarn over. So where we are, I am at the end where it says for the second time to turn the work 90 degrees and remove the provisional cast on. So we just removed the provisional cast on. And now I've placed my 4 stitches on the left needle. I'm going to go back and add that yarn over. That was between the stitches I picked up here and these last 4 stitches. And then I'm going to knit these last 4 stitches through the back loop. So this is my favorite provisional cast on. If you have one of your own, that is totally fine. Like, use whatever you would like. You can also just cast on and pick up stitches at the end. You don't have to necessarily use waste yarn. Okay, so now I'm on row 9. So I am going to knit 4 stitches through the back loop. And now this center part here, this is going to be the body of the shawl. So we're doing a wrong side row right here. That means we're going to purl across these. So I'm going to purl 9 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and these are 2 are a little stuck together. 8 and 9. So that leaves us with 4 stitches, and those are the 4 stitches at the edging. So I'm going to work 2 stitches through the back loop. Now I'm going to yarn over 2 times and work these last 2 stitches through the back loop. So it doesn't look like much yet. Looks a little funky so far. But you can see it's starting to show that nice edging detail. And then this center part here is going to be your shawl. So now we are ready to start chart A. And I'm going to show you my horrible printout again because I showed you the nice pretty file. So now here we go. Okay, so we're right down after row 9 and we have 19 stitches. So it's just going to go straight into chart A here. Okay, so here's where I start talking about having 40 stitches between the markers and 52 stitches total. On the first row of chart A, you're going to be placing markers. So let's take a look here. Very interesting color here on chart A. But I think you can see it well enough to kind of get what's going on. So right along here, this part is the edging. And I have in the written instructions to place markers. So if you're just doing the charts, you can also place markers. So I would place the marker right after this last stitch here that's knit through the back loop, and right before this first stitch at the end here that's knit through the back loop. So this center portion here, that's all going to be in stockinette stitch, this whole area in here. And the sides are in garter stitch. Okay, so in this chart, you're not going to see any of those red stitches that I showed you earlier. So this is just like normal. It's pretty straightforward. I think the only thing a little interesting is where you're going to be binding off in here. So wherever there's a bind off, you're going to see this little vertical line right after the bound off stitches. So that denotes the stitch that is left on your needle after you have bound the stitches off. So you have to work 2 stitches to bind off 1 stitch. So you're going to work 2 stitches, bind off 1, work another stitch, bind off 1, and then you're going to have 1 stitch left on your right needle, and that's this little stitch right here, the vertical line. And then you're going to work these other 3 stitches. So you'll have a total of 4 stitches here in the edging. So I know some of you like to use markers in between the repeats. That's completely cool. It will help to keep you on track to use those markers. So I'm all for markers. But one thing I want to remind you is that markers um, along repeat lines, when you use them, they are just denoting the repeat. So in other words, stitches may move around. And on the chart, it will look like they're not really moving around. And that is not an issue until we get kind of down further here. Sometimes you can tell a little bit when stitches are going to move because you can see something different going on in the edge along here. So for instance, right here on row 19, we're increasing a couple of stitches, and then those stitches end up over here inside the repeat. So whenever something like this happens right beside a repeat line, just be kind of aware that your markers may move around a little bit. So don't get too tied to how many stitches are in between each repeat. Read your knitting instead. So if you take a look at the chart here, even if you're using written instructions, if you take a look at the chart, you can see how this line follows. So if you start to see lines like this getting broken up and there's no clear line of stitches heading up to a point, then something is wrong. But if you see those lines clearly delineated and the motif is looking like the chart in this way, then even if you feel like your stitch count might be a little bit off, you're probably right, because stitches will tend to move around a little bit. Okay, just checking to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay, so I'm going to show you this little stitch in here. I'm going to show you a few stitches. Let me just get my stuff together. Alrighty. So here we go. Let's just go through the stitches in the chart, key to the chart. So there's the no stitch. And actually, let me pull up the pattern so you can actually see how this looks. Okay. Alrighty. So we have our no stitch right here. So that literally, like there is no stitch. No stitch exists there at all. That's just a placeholder. And it's to make the chart line up properly so you can see how the motif is growing. So in other words, remember when I was talking about how you can watch your motif kind of line up with how the chart looks? So is um, this is what's going to help you make sure that it's lining up nicely. So knit, self-explanatory, purl, self-explanatory. This is a bind off stitch, and you're only going to see those in the edging. Okay, and we were talking about that little vertical line there. So you're going to see that wherever in the edging you bind anything off. We've already done the knit through the back loop and then the yarn over. And most of the yarn over, the double yarn overs in here are written with just 2 yarn overs side by side. That's just a double yarn over. So make one. I'm going to show you how to do one of those. And then we have the place bead. So I'm going to do that in the next live, most likely, unless somebody wants to scoot ahead really fast um, and place beads yet. They don't get placed for a while. So I'm just going to go over that in our next live. So this is just an increase of stitches, and this is also an increase of stitches. So these look a little bit different, and I will show you how those look different. Okay, and then we have the T2L and the T2R. I'm going to show you those as well. And most of you know the knit two together, the SSK. So this is a 3SK. I thought in this pattern it looked better as an opposite to the knit three together rather than using an SK2P. So you'll see these mirrored, the 3SK with the knit three together, and then 4SK with the knit four together. And here we have an increased 5. So this is modeled after a noop, but luckily you don't have to purl anything together, so that should be better. Okay, so let's go back to my hands, and I'm just going to show you some of these stitches. Okay, so we did the bind off. I'm just going to show you how you would do a make one. So I'm knitting the edge stitch here. I'm going to do a make one. So I didn't specify left or right, which means you can use whichever one is more comfortable for you. So you're just going to pick the bar up and put it up onto your needle. And then the bar needs to be worked so it's twisted so you don't leave as big a hole. So I'm going to twist that stitch. So I have made an extra stitch there. So let me get into the middle here. Just going to kind of get past this edging and into the middle. Okay, so let's show you this knit one, yarn over knit one into a stitch. So first I'm going to dip into this first stitch. Let's move this back. I'm just going to dip into this stitch and knit one without taking the stitch off of my needle. Yarn over and then back into the stitch again, and then I can take that stitch off of my needle. So I have worked 3 stitches into this 1 stitch. Okay, so the next one is a centered double increase, a CDI. And in this case, I've done this so that it will look much more centered. So see how at the base here, that's kind of wide. That makes that stitch kind of wide. So the CDI will cut that down and make it look neater and tighter together. So the first thing I'm going to do is work a knit stitch through the back loop. And I'm going to keep my stitch still on the left needle, then yarn over. And then I'm going to knit through the front of that first stitch and pop it off the needle there. So you can see at the base here, that's twisted. So it looks, it just looks narrower. They're used for a different effect. And then over next to that, you can see at the base here, that stitch is wider. So you can see that the legs of the stitch are sort of spread apart. And this one is all twisted so that it centers this the center stitch here, and just looks like you've knitted that through the back loop. Okay, so let's just do the 3SK. So you're just going to slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit 3 times. So it would be the same for 4. If I wanted to do 4, I'd just do 1 more. Then they're going to go back on my left needle, but I'm going to keep my right needle right in there in the back, and I'm going to work those 3 stitches together. So that slants off to the left, and it's a mirror image of the knit 3 together. Okay, so now we're going to do the increase 5 that's kind of modeled after a noop. And this is going to go just straight into the stitch. No knitting through the back loop. So we're going to do 5 stitches from this 1 stitch. The first one is just a knit, and then yarn over. I'm going to reach back in there and knit another stitch, and then a yarn over, and then I'm going to go back in and knit another stitch, and then that can come off the needle now. So I've just used this as an increase in the charts. And so you don't have to purl anything together like you would for a noop. Yay. Okay. So next time, just go back to this. Next time, we are going to talk about beads. So right here you can see I didn't go over the beads because those are pretty far from here. So you're going to have to go all the way through chart A. You're going to work chart B. So you can see on chart B, row 2, you can see right here that you're going to be working an increase. And then up on row 33, you're going to be working that sort of noop-ish increase. And just going to come down here. We're going to go all the way through chart C. So actually, I didn't show you the T2R and the T2L, or the twist left and the twist right. I'm going to show you that in a sec. And it's not until we get all the way through here that we're placing beads. So next time. Okay, so, alrighty. So we're going to do the twist. We are going to do the T to R. Okay. So what I want to do is twist this second stitch over this first one. So I'm going to completely ignore this first stitch and knit into the second stitch, and nothing comes off my needles yet. And now I'd like to kind of hold it with my finger. Now I'm going to knit into that first stitch, and they're both going to come off the needle. So that second stitch is twisted across the first stitch. Okay, so now we are going to do the T to L. So in this case, I want this first stitch to go over the top of the second stitch. So I'm going to take my needle and reach all the way behind this first stitch. I don't want to get that on my needles at all. And let me move this out of the way so it's easier to see. I don't want to get that stitch in there at all, so I'm going to reach all the way around back and through the back loop of that second stitch. So I just knit the second stitch in through the back loop without touching the first stitch. And now I am going to work that first stitch. And then both come off the needles. So now this first stitch is twisted over the top of the second stitch. So in the first one, the second stitch was twisted over the top. And in the second one here, this first stitch was twisted over the top. Okie doke. Alrighty, well, that is gonna do it for now. But I am gonna have another live, and so that we can just go over all the rest of the like placing beads and all of that fun stuff. Oh, and before we go, I want to show you the texture of the leaves. So those twisted stitches, this is the texture that it creates. So at first, when you do these, you could see when I demonstrated it, it looked a little bit messy. But once it's all blocked out, it looks really beautiful. And the other thing I do want to remind you that lace looks terrible before it's blocked. So just remember, lace looks terrible before it's blocked. And if you want to see it looking pretty, you can steam it, kind of pull the pattern out over your knees or something like that, just to sort of open up the lace so you can see what it is looking like. And you're going to notice that as you're going through the charts, there are going to be increasing and decreasing numbers of stitches in the rows. So the decreases are used to sort of tension and make areas of the motif more obvious. And it's sort of a way to enhance the pattern. So if it looks a little odd to you at first, don't worry because it blocks out. So it blocks into a perfect half circle. So do not worry if it's kind of going in and out a little bit on the edging. It will be fine. Okay, so let me just make sure that there are no questions. If you have any questions for me, if I didn't go over something that you were hoping that I would go over, please let me know. You can ask questions on Ravelry or in the Facebook group, either one. And I'm going to set up another live. So I think what I'm going to do is just a week from today, and I will be sending out confirmation of that and links and everything in the newsletter. And don't be shy. Go ahead and ask questions, and I can put up extra little tutorials or direct you to the right place to answer questions. I'm here and and yeah, thank you for joining me and thank you for your patience through this like kind of dragging time for me. I really appreciate it. Um, so just checking one more time to make sure that nobody else had a question. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a fantastic weekend. And one more thing I did want to say, I am having a one skein knit along right now as well. And the medium size is one skein. So really that applies. And you can also, even if you're doing the tall size, you can do this. You don't have to finish within the 3.5 weeks in order to be eligible for prizes. So join us, hang out. That's in my Ravelry group. And just take care, enjoy, relax, and happy lace knitting. And I will talk to you later. Bye bye.